And Jeff, the floor is yours. So go to it.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Jeff Bradbury, and this is my son Robert. He's my oldest triplet, and today we are going to be tag teaming to talk to you guys about Google Meet. If you guys can do me a big favor, let me know that you're here out in the chat, and maybe give me your what school you're in and what grade. I'm trying to figure out if I want to do a general, do an older, under, all those different things. Just tell me what grade you teach. I see a lot of music teachers here. That is absolutely awesome. Let's dive in. I'm going to do a screen share with you here, and I'm going to share my whole screen because I want to start at the beginning here and just kind of look at where we are with things. Now, there we are, and it looks good. So first of all, my name is Jeff Bradbury. I am a brand new teacher here. This is my first year at West Rocks Middle School. Go Panthers. And I do teach technology education and broadcast journalism. If you guys are on Twitter, you can always find us at WRMS Panther News. And I want to say thank you again to the district and for Ralph for giving us the opportunity to do all this stuff here. Let's talk a little bit about Google Meet. What is it? Why is it? What are you hearing? What are some of the myths? And I really want to focus not necessarily on the application, although we will. I really would love to have a kind of small conversation about how to do things. Robert is not alone. He has two other siblings. I have 6-year-old triplets. And every single day, including right now, I'm watching teachers just like you, the elementary level, try to have meaningful distant learning conversations with these guys. And so those are kind of that's kind of ultimately where I love to do the session here, whether that be on the YouTube or off the YouTube. But I think that's an important conversation here because we're dealing with people that have attention spans that are all over the place. But let's just kind of start and talk about where we are right now. Google Meet is an amazing application. It's free, and it's also part of the G Suite. And when we say that, I want you to understand it is safe. It's student safe and student friendly. Okay. And it is controlled by the district. We can turn things on, we can turn things off. Okay. So where you're hearing things like Google bombs and all this weird terminology, I just want you to let you guys know up front, like it's a safe technology that we can use. So I want to talk a little bit about where we are today. We're going to cover on the left over here, what is Google Meet? How can it be used? I want to give you guys a quick tour. I want to talk to you about inviting students, and I'm going to give you guys a few options, ones that you might not even know are right under your noses, ones that are going to make their life easier and parents' life easier. We'll talk a little bit about keeping it safe and secure. And if we have time, we'll go into some of the advanced features on here. If there's any questions, please feel free to stop and we'll kind of go on for there, all right? So what is Google Meet? You might have heard this term called Google Hangouts. And it's kind of ironic that we're doing this training today because actually as of this past week, Google officially twilighted or canceled Google Hangouts. Hangouts came out about 7 or 8 years ago, and then they rebranded into Meet. They added a bunch of new features. For most people right now, if they say Meet or Hangouts, they mean the same thing. It's like going to a copier or going to a Xerox machine. It is free. If you can actually have over 200 and some participants on one of these things. So if you're looking to do it for an entire musical performance, you could have the entire community onto a Google Meet. It's very quick. It's very simple that you can connect with people. And again, it's very safe and it's controlled by our administration. You can see here we've got a couple different things. First of all, we can always find it over at meet.google.com. Okay. And as you can see from the left and to the right of my screen, the backgrounds change, but overall, the basic idea is here. It says join or start a meeting. Now, another way that you can find it is by going up to your waffle. And I'm going to throw a couple ideas at you over here, but what you're going to see on the top right is a waffle, these 9 dots. Okay. And that's where we have all these little icons. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you can always take these icons and you can move them around. So if you really like Google Meets, you can move it up and it's there. Okay, so just for a little bit of clarification here, the 9 dots is a waffle. The 3 dots up and down, if you ever see 3 dots up and down, we call that a snowman. Okay, if you ever see the 3 dots next to each other, we either call that a dead snowman or a shish kebab. So you can always find this in a couple different spots, meet.google.com, or you can go to the waffle. Let's talk about creating a room. Okay, I'm going to do these slides a little out of the way here, but there's two ways that I would recommend doing a room. The first is if you go to the meet.google.com, you can click on start a recording. Now, this does ask you to join or start, and I'm going to just click on a name here, and I'm going to start to type and go, my video conference room. Okay, I can click continue. Okay, so the first thing that it's going to ask me to do is to configure my camera, and I'm not going to go through all of this right now. That's why I've got two screens, because obviously right now the camera's on me from the Zoom call. But with this, you've got a couple options. You can click on the join to start. All right, you can adjust your video settings. And you can also adjust your camera. Now, why would you want to do that? First of all, maybe you're running on two video cameras. You have an external camera and then maybe your Chromebook camera. Also, right now, because of coronavirus, because of high bandwidth, if I click over here, you're going to notice that under settings, you've got a couple different options. And I think I even have, I'll get to that slide, but you can change your microphone. For instance, right now I'm on an external microphone and my speakers are coming through the microphone. You can also change what resolution. And so if you're noticing that there's a lot of lag, if there's a lot of, down on your screen, I would recommend you come into settings and change it from 360 up to 720. In fact, that's actually what I do before all of my classes or anytime I jump onto a meet. Google has automatically, by default, made everything standard definition, so that way it saves them bandwidth. What I've found is because I'm on a higher camera, and many of you guys are on higher quality cameras, that makes your video choppy because your video camera is actually downgrading itself. So before I go into a meet, I always manually upgrade it to the high definition camera. And if you feel that's important for you, I would recommend doing that stuff too. So I always come in and I just make these things both 720. Important things to talk about here. You don't have to be on video. Many of my classes, I'm doing a Google Meet, but I'm not on video. We're just having an audio communication. And you're going to find a lot of your students or even parents aren't comfortable or aren't able to be on video. So it's just like a telephone call. Okay. For instance, very often I might just say I'm going to do audio only. And when I do that, it shuts off the video completely. Okay. So don't feel like you have to be pressured to be on video or with your camera or what's my background going to look like, all those things. You can totally do audio as we go through here. Okay. So a couple things, because again, let's see if I can do this. There's my mute button. There's my camera's off button. So I'm going to join right now and let's talk a little bit about the interface. There's a lot of different things on here with this interface. First of all, let me get rid of that. You're going to notice I've got this Zoom thing all over the place. Let me move. Can I move this? I'm going to move this all the way up here. All right. So a couple things about the interface. You can always change the name. You notice it says My Video Conference Room down here. Okay. You could always copy the joining info. So for instance, if you were doing this with friends and family or anybody that's not a Norwalk person, you can always pop into a meeting room, copy the joining information. Okay. Down here on the bottom, you have your turn on, turn off. You also have your hang up button. One of the really neat features that I like is the captions button. I like this for many reasons. Number one, my 6-year-old right now is reading everything. Your kids are going to be able to read. And there's a lot of kids that I work with every day and they're like, it's noisy in my house. It's hard to concentrate. So by putting the words up and by putting the captions up, that gives you captions and that also gives your students or your guests captions. Okay. You can also click over here to record a meeting. Okay. If you want. And the meetings are pretty awesome because, I do it for security. I don't watch them. I don't read them. I don't send them to anybody, but I keep them for security just in case something happens. Everything gets recorded into your Google Drive. Okay. So when you're done recording, a couple, 20 minutes after you're done hitting the record button, you get an email that says, here's the link to your recording, and it saves right into your hard drive. I figure at the end of the summer, I'm just going to wipe all those videos clean. Okay. You do have a couple options. As far as layout, you can do big screen with a bunch of people on the right side. You can now do tiled view. This is actually a new feature. or you can do spotlight where nobody's on the screen except for whoever is speaking. Okay. Other settings that are important just to kind of go through here. You can turn off the captions. You can go full screen. Okay. And then up here, there's a couple other options. You may or may not see this one. This is a Chrome extension. We can talk about this a little bit later. That helps you with grid view. But you have an option here to see all your people, and you can notice who's speaking. You can also add people. I can add Ralph if I need to, R-A-L-P-H. And you can see it's just easy. I'm gonna hit the send email. He'll get it. I'll cancel out of that. Or there's the chat box. Couple things you need to know. The chat box in Google Meet is almost identical to the way that the chat box is in Zoom, meaning if you're 20 minutes into the class and somebody new enters, they start with a fresh chat box. Okay. So if you've been chatting for 10 or 20 minutes or whatever, and somebody walks into your Google Meet, they start with a fresh chat. In other words, you'd have to repost any links, repost anything that they'd want those people to see. Okay. The idea here is it's very, very straightforward. You might see this on our screen here. This is actually a Chrome extension I can share with a little bit later that basically gives people the ability to do thumbs up or raise their hand. Okay. You know, middle school is what I teach. It kind of gets a little distracting, but when I'm having conversations with people, it is that opportunity to do things, to keep it a little interactive with things. Okay. I'm going to pause right there because I went through a lot of buttons. I am going to make my slides available, but Ralph, are there any quick questions before we talk about other settings and other ways of using this real quick?
So one thing is, I know that there's questions about recording, and we can talk about that once we finish, you know, whether or not you'd want to, but there is some questions about finding ways to turn off comments.
No. In a nutshell, it is, you know, you can't really filter things. There's two ways around that. And I see this happening with, you know, with my kindergarten teachers. Everything that happens in a Google Meet is a teachable moment waiting to happen, right? If somebody puts a word, if somebody does something, if somebody says something to somebody else, it's an opportunity. It's one of the reasons why I record all of my stuff through the video capture, you know, going up here and hitting a record. There is no major filter on that. And correct me, Ralph, that is correct, right? There is no filter on this.
There, meaning?
Google is not filtering the chat.
No, but we are filtering our own chat through Gaggle.
Okay.
So like I said, so if there's anything that's inappropriate and anything in our Google environment, so Google Docs and so forth. So I believe it actually works for the chat within Google as well. It would be flagged so that then, you know, the teacher would get to know what that is, or the administrator if something was said inappropriately that we have to deal with.
The nice thing is when you record it, I believe, I'm 90% sure about this, that everything is recorded. All the comments are recorded, you know, it is a recording of everything that you're doing. So again, other reasons why every time I have a meeting, or even today, like I did a one-to-one with a student who had a couple of interesting questions, I hit the record button. It just protects me, just in case anything happens, in case there's any he said, she said stuff. And at the end of the day, I'll delete it at the end of the school year.
Okay.
All right, so let's go on. If there's any other questions, we can hit that. We did talk a little bit about the audio video settings. Okay, let me just pop this over here. We can always come in, you know, when we're in this chat. This thing here, I missed my second monitor. When we're in here, I can always come into settings, right? And again, I've got the audio settings, I've got the video settings. That's what these two buttons are here for. So you can always change those as we go with things. Okay. Let's talk about inviting. Okay. Here's how I recommend doing this. All right. There's a lot of different ways to invite people in. All right. One of those ways is you can send an email. You can set up a Google Meet here, come over here, grab the copy link, open an email, send it to somebody. You can certainly do that. That was the original way, I would say 11 weeks ago. Another way that you can do things, and I'll make this one really quick, but this is really important when we're dealing with meetings and adults and stuff like that. If I'm in Google Calendar and I'm creating an event, right here, it says add Google Meet video conferencing. So if I'm setting up a meeting with Ralph, I can come over here to add Google Meet and it automatically generates the Google Meet. I send this to Ralph, he gets it on his end, and right there, there's the Google Meet. Okay, and I'm mentioning this first because this is mostly for adult to adult or parents or, that kind of a thing. So it's really simple to do this here. Where you're going to mostly work with your students is in Google Classroom. Now, recently, about 3 weeks or so ago, Google actually created a feature now where the Google Meet link is in the Google Classroom. And so let's talk a little bit about this and how to find it. If I'm in Google Classroom, and give me a chat here. How many of you guys are in Google Classroom? Feel free to raise your hand or anything like that. If I'm in Google Classroom and I go to settings, okay, and I go all the way down to this, you can turn Google Meet on and off, and it automatically generates a code for a Google Meet that only your students, only the people registered are able to get into. Not only is it only intended for those who are in your classroom, but they cannot get into the Google Meet unless you are there. They can't get into it early. They can't get into it after you leave. Okay? It is safe. It is secure. You are the teacher. They are the students. And if you need to, you can copy it or you can even reset it. Okay? So what I do is I just leave this on. I hit save. And before all of my classes, I'll say something like, good morning. The Meet link is in the banner. See you soon, right? And I post this, and only the people who are in this Google Classroom training are allowed to click on this, and only after I show up. They can't do it before and they can't do it after. This is by far the easiest way to get you and your students in the same Google Meets every single day. I see my 6-year-olds do it. My middle school kids are doing it. It's really, really simple to put everybody all in the same place at the same time. Okay. That's a biggie. I want to stop again. Any questions about that? How to start, how to get kids in, all of those different things. Are there any hands raising for that little bit?
I know there was a question from one of our teachers, and I'd like to address it as soon as we end the recording, regarding just getting kids in and out from here. But I wrote it down for a little later. Got it. Okay. And can you repeat that one more time? I'll go through the steps of like adding in the Google Classroom. Sure. So a new Google Classroom. Okay, so I'm in Google Classroom. Okay. If I come down here to the general tab, right, you see where the class code is, you see the stream. And one of the things that I might recommend, and I know it's elementary, but we're all on teachable moments these days. When I was teaching at West Rocks, I had my settings to say students cannot post or comment. In other words, the stream was just for me. But times have changed, and I'm also seeing how my 6-year-olds are doing. So right now, I have my stream for all of my middle school classes to say students can post and comment. Number one, it's a nice way for them to communicate with each other. I see this one here constantly writing out, stream stuff going, hey, so-and-so, how are you doing? I miss you, Robert. And that's really, really cool. So I keep everything for students and post, but right here, it says Google Meet. And I can turn this on and off. And if I hit save, you're going to notice here that I guess it didn't finish. Yep, there you go. So you can see right here, this is how we turn things on and we can turn things off. I can copy this. I can reset it. Now, if I copy this and I email it to Ralph, he's not going to be able to get in. And he's not going to be able to get in because he's not a student in my class. So just keep that in mind. That's a major, major safety feature of only the people who are in your students and in your class can get into that. And again,
They can only do that while you're in the Google Meet. Okay? So 3 simple methods what we talked about: sending a link, sending a calendar invite, and doing it through Google Classroom. Okay? As you can see, baby B just walked in and started screaming. So that's where we are. We also talked about over here, you can also grab it from the corner, but we don't worry about that. We talked about the Google Calendar event, and we talked about doing everything here on Google Classroom. Okay? Are we good there?
I think we are.
Excellent.
What I'd like to do, and Jeff, that's incredible timing too. So what I'd like to do now is actually cut off the YouTube stream, because I think we've covered all the basic features, and that's what we'll keep as our tutorial, but then spend the rest of the time answering a lot of the questions that are kind of coming up in the chat.